So it's 6:01, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Career Q&A Live, a new series that brings UCSB Career Services together with a professional in the field. And so we're bringing UCSB students together to talk with Joanna Romo today. And we're talking virtually about different industries, and we're allowing space to kind of discuss different questions as well as make different connections. And so my name is Carol Huang, and I am the Career Counselor Coordinator for Careers in Education and Human Services here at UCSB Career Services. I'm going to be hosting today's discussion, and we're going to be talking specifically about careers in nonprofits. And so before we get started, I'm going to keep admitting some students to join our call. Our agenda today starts with a quick introduction about our special guest, followed by a few questions that I will ask, and then some questions that you may have as students. So students, you may submit your questions in the chat box on the screen at any time, and then I will check in periodically to ensure that we can ask as many of them as we can. So I would like to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. So future gauchos who couldn't tune in live today will have a chance to view our recorded conversation. So let's get started. Joanna Romo is the project director of Santa Barbara's Cal Soap. She was the first in her family to attend college, and she graduated from UCSB. She attended grad school at Sonoma State University and has been working in the field of education for 16 years in a variety of different districts throughout California. She has 6 years of experience working in nonprofit organizations where she helped develop educational programs. Prior to joining the CalSOAP team, she worked for the Napa County Office of Education with several school districts as part of the Northern California Career Pathways Alliance, which is funded through the California Career Pathways Trust. Her experience working with this grant helped her understand the need to increase graduation rates and prepare underserved students for higher education. This helped strengthen her passion for working with low-income, first-generation college-bound students. And being a first-generation college graduate herself, Joanna's 16 years of having worked with public schools and 6 years with rural and urban nonprofits in various capacities has helped her develop a well-rounded understanding for the need to help students achieve the academic success and pursue career goals. So thank you, Joanna, for being with us today. So the first question that I have for you, Joanna, is how did you get started in your career as related to your educational experiences, as well as maybe some work experience and experiential learning that you've had and the skills that you've gained through those?
Okay, well, first of all, my path wasn't linear. It went in different directions. And I think that where I kind of picked up more of my passion or my direction as to what I wanted to do was when I actually ended up going to college and realizing that I wasn't the only one that was struggling while I was going to college. Coming from an immigrant family, you know, not really understanding, or my parents actually not understanding how the system worked, how to navigate it. So I pretty much had to do that all on my own. And then I also saw that students around me were also struggling with the same issues that I was struggling with. So I did see the inequities. I did see the struggles that they had as far as being able to reach the goals that they wanted. But at the same time, also, I was one of those students that was actually always working. So while I was going to school, I was actually working. One of the first official jobs that I had was working over at Ivy School, right there, very close by UCSB. So I was working as a bilingual assistant. And then it was very convenient because, you know, I would go there and then I'd go back to school and go to my classes. So when I saw the students and I was working with them, I started realizing that a lot of the kids in elementary school were going through the same struggles. And that's when I kind of started realizing, well, maybe teaching is where I want to go to. But actually, after working for several years afterwards in education or working with public schools, I started off working, like I said, as a bilingual assistant. Then I worked with a special ed program. And that kind of showed me a lot of the what teachers had to deal with in a classroom. And I started realizing I kind of want to do a little bit more than just that. I'd like to be able to kind of work outside of the box and not work in such kind of a rigid, for me, it was a bit of a rigid environment. So I kept moving forward with working in different, positions within public schools, but never as a teacher. And then when I went to grad school, that was when I started really realizing, hey, I can mold my education the way that I wanted to. So I think I had shared this with you. So I went into an interdisciplinary program, which meant that I was able to create my own master's degree. So I used 3 different disciplines: anthropology, sociology, and education, and combined it all together to create my master's program. And with that, I also in the area, I was subbing at times in the school districts in the area up in Sonoma. And with that, I started really realizing, oh, wow, I'm not only am I gathering information from what I'm for the grad program that I'm in, but I'm also starting to kind of use that knowledge with the students there. And so that helped to really kind of shape the direction that I wanted to go into. So then I ended up working in nonprofit. So worked in a very small nonprofit in a rural town in St. Helena and Calistoga. And I ended up working with families and students together. And that's when I started picking up my passion and realizing, oh, I can develop and mold my own program within this nonprofit. So that's when I realized, wow, nonprofits are amazing. They really work with the communities. They actually are working with the community needs. And we're constantly assessing the needs of the community. So developing programs that actually meet those needs. And that's when I started realizing, wow, this is kind of what I like, and I started realizing that by listening to the community needs, I was creating programs that they were actually liking and assisting, instead of like, okay, here's something that you need to go to, and being forced to go to something that they didn't quite understand or it wasn't really relevant to them. So then I ended up working with the nonprofits for a little while, developing some of the educational programs. I ended up working with other organizations and developed some early childhood programs. So a lot of families that weren't able to put their kids into the preschool programs that were in the area, we created programs where families could come in with their children and be able to participate. And at the same time, they were also learning and developing skills on how to work with their kids and developing language, and what are the appropriate activities at different, levels of, as they're growing, right? So then after that, as I had told you before, I had decided I really wanted to come back to my community, and I had all of this wealth of knowledge, and I realized, I really always really liked working with students, going back to the nonprofit, I did end up working with high school students. So we created a program that was working with high school girls in order to prevent pregnancies within, for teenage girls, and trying to get them to move on and go and graduate and then move on to 4-year, or even if it was a 2-year program, but for at least for them to understand what those opportunities were after they graduated from high school. So then with that knowledge, came back to Santa Barbara, and I was looking to see, like, okay, where can I fit back in my community? And I also, I had expressed before, was that I ended up being here for about a year, didn't quite fit, went back, and that's when I ended up working with the Napa County Office of Ed. And the program that I worked with, I ended up working with several high schools, and I loved it. So we were working with career technical education teachers and curriculum, and I was helping to develop that. and helping to develop partnerships with industries and teachers, and so that we could create that bridge for students to understand what all those possibilities are once they're out of high school or once they go on to college. And also for them to get more of that hands-on learning and understand what the relationship is between what they're learning in high school to the jobs that are possible out there. And with that, when I came back to Santa Barbara and ended up in this position, which is what I really wanted, and working for a nonprofit, but at the same time, our program is really administered by the California Student Aid Commission. And the more I learned about my job as I was going through it, I realized that the position actually was not just working within our community, but it's a project that's all across the state of California. So we are one of 15 projects across the state of California. And then our program works directly with underserved students. And now I'm actually providing that information that I lacked when I was going to college and when I was going to school. Now I'm actually providing that information to high school students. And so it's really rewarding to me because, seeing the struggles that students have gone through or go through when they're in high school, and not exactly knowing, especially when you're coming from immigrant families that don't really understand the system and how to navigate it. And you have someone else is coming along and giving you that information is so helpful. Then you feel really supported. And that's when you really feel that your community is helping you out. And that's really what I wanted to do. And so that's where I'm at now. And I love my job. I go in every day and I'm like, I love it. And I know I'm doing mostly administrative work, but, just knowing that having all these partnerships with all the different industries, we're partnering with UCSB, Santa Barbara City College, with school districts. We partner with Carpinteria, and out in Goleta. And we're serving, right now, we serve over 3,000 students through our program.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It sounds like you're doing a lot of great work, like just throughout your career, as well as sort of like right now here just in the Santa Barbara area. So that's really cool to hear about your programs and things like that. So, in light of tonight's topic and in talking about program development and nonprofits and education, can you share a little bit about your job, your position? I know you talked about it a little bit already, but can you talk a little bit about the work that you do and maybe even elaborate a little bit about the work that you do with UCSB students and kind of share about what we've been doing in the community right now?
Okay, so my program, or our program here in Santa Barbara, is called CalSOAP, which stands for California Student Opportunities and Access Program. We are fiscally managed by Community Action Commission, which is a nonprofit, but we are administered by the California Student Aid Commission, which is, if your students are listening, they're the ones that are giving you all of your Cal grants. So that's where CalSOAP is actually, those are the people that are managing CalSOAP across the state of California. So for my job specifically, I am the connection with, and for short, California Student Aid Commission is CSAC, that's what we call it. So I am a connection between CSAC and in our community here. So what I do in my job every day is just oversee how our programs are running, making sure that we are serving students and making sure that the services that we're providing are being provided within the parameters that we are establishing in the school sites and with our other partners. Now, as far as the students that we hire UCSB students. About, I would say, 98% are UCSB students that we hire as tutors, and a few. We have one that's going to CSUCI, And we have one from SBCC, and very soon I think we're going to have one from Westmont, just waiting on them clearing their fingerprints. So they're all students that need to show a financial need. So they're going to school and obviously working at the same time. So they're working part-time for us, and what we do is we place them in the different school sites, and so that they can help students 7th to 12th grade. And of course, the schools love it. It's free. You know, we're paying for their salaries, we're paying for them to be there. And so we have connections in the schools. Usually it's either a teacher or a counselor that helps us to navigate the tutors into the classrooms, and then they work within the time frame that they have. So usually, you know, that for UCSB students, it's usually a quarterly system where we have to look and see, okay, how has your schedule changed? All right, we can work around your schedule. So we try to accommodate students' schedule in order for them to work. And that really, you know, and a lot of our tutors really like it because of that. We also have some after-school programs that we work with. And so we do have students that are available in the evenings to work in after-school programs. A lot of our tutors love it. For a lot of them, it's their first job, and that's actually where they're gaining their first professional skills. And so yeah, so that's pretty much what we do. But besides that, we also have financial aid services. So we help students understand how to be able to apply for FAFSA or DREAM Act. And then we also have some tutors that are in the career centers where they help out students, and they're there, and so that students can come to them and ask for help if they need help with navigating the applications.
Great, thank you for sharing. So for the folks who don't know, Joanna here is a UCSB alum, and so I would like to ask you, how did you utilize campus resources when you were a student to obtain career information and prepare for your career? And then what advice would you have for UCSB students who are interested in sort of like the area of nonprofit work, maybe educational nonprofits and things like that? And what kind of skills do you think or experiences should they gain?
Okay, so as far as resources at UCSB, actually, I didn't use them that much. What it was is I was constantly working with professors, or one of the things that I learned, I took one of the classes that I ended up taking or doing was assistant to an anthropology professor. And I learned a lot of skills through her as I was helping her with her research work. And with that, I realized, you know, that creating that kind of relationship with people that have knowledge around what they're doing is really, you know, it's very important. And that's when I realized, oh, you know, I could actually, you know, I can make connections with professors. It's not like they're so above me that I really can't have these types of relationships where I can have conversations with them, whether they can give me some pointers or you know, pass down some of the knowledge that they've gained in their field. And so that was one professor that was instrumental in kind of shaping those ideas. And then with that, I felt very confident enough to reach out to other professors, and those professors, or actually one particular one, I think he's still there, Dr. Foran. He's a sociology professor. So anyways, he was another professor that really helped me out during the time that I was going to school at UCSB. And, you know, and just kind of gaining a little bit more knowledge about what they were doing. And then, sorry, what was the rest of the
what advice do you have for UCSB students who are exploring sort of like the nonprofit careers and things like that? And what are some skills and knowledge that you think that they should gain by the time they graduate to prepare for their first job?
Okay. So, so that's where I was going with what I was saying. So, it's always good to be able to try to gain some sort of knowledge through either internships or having some sort of job, and whatever kind of job you have, gaining those professional skills are really important. So just to kind of give you an example, from what I was doing before at Napa County Office of Ed, what the things that we were doing with students was really trying to teach them about soft skills, which are so basic, right? And so to me, that's extremely important, because as I've been working with the college students, our tutors, I've realized that, you know, a lot of them, this is their first real job. And so they need a little bit more direction. And so developing soft skills is really important. You know, those basic skills of knowing how to be able to come in and talk to someone, presenting yourself to, you know, an administrator or a teacher and saying who you are, you know, just very basic skills like that. Just developing those types of skills are really important, so that you start gaining a little bit more of that professional appearance and a professional attitude. And also, you know, I feel that what's also really important is to not be afraid to ask, and, you know, and ask someone who understands their job, and if you need a little bit more direction. Sometimes I've had those issues with some of the tutors where they come to me and they say, well, you know, I'm not really sure how to ask the teacher what else she'd like me to do. And I said, well, you know, just have those conversations, open up and have those conversations, let them know that you're willing and that you're open to being able to do a little bit more, but you just don't know exactly how to go about it. So yeah, so don't be shy about it.
Awesome, thank you. I wanted to remind students that you can submit questions through the chat. And so please just like write some questions into the chat box. And so right now I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So if you have questions, submit them. So my next question for you is, can you tell us about like what or who really inspires you to do this type of work? And how did you really know that it was a good fit for you?
Well, first of all, when I knew that the job had to do with being able to provide resources and awareness to high school students about their post-secondary opportunities, that's when I realized, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to make their path easier, knowing that my path was very difficult. And so, yeah, so that's when I realized, yes, this job really fit with my way of thinking. Yeah.
And can you tell us what are the kind of most rewarding or challenging aspects of your job?
It's when talking with our partners, you know, talking with teachers. A lot of times I will get an email from a teacher saying, you know, we really love this tutor in our classroom. They really did a great job. And we are so happy that, you know, we have this opportunity to have a free tutor in our classroom. And you know, or when a high school student or even a family comes to us and tells us, I had no idea that we actually qualified for financial aid and you guys helped us, and now my kid, I don't have to worry about how we're going to pay for college. So those are the rewards that I get. It's those stories that I get, those narratives that I get from people telling me that our program is working, and that, and then of course, you know, knowing that our program, I haven't been around since 1984 in my job, but the program itself has been around since 1984. And knowing that there are so many people that have passed through the program. For example, Monique Limon, who's our assembly member, used to be the program coordinator for Cal Soap.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was in the early 2000 or so. So also knowing the kind of people that have gone through our program, whether they've been tutors or high school students, and now they're in a position. We also have one of our teachers that we work with at the Santa Barbara Junior High. He used to be a CalSOAP tutor, mm-hmm. and now he's a teacher. You know, so those are all the things that tell me that this program is actually doing the right thing.
Okay, cool. So I have like a whole bunch of questions that just kind of like flooded in, and so I'm going to kind of work through them. But can you kind of share sort of like what kind of like academic and soft skills students could kind of develop? And can you kind of describe what that means? And how you would advise students to kind of talk about their soft skills or like academics or professional skills in an interview. I'm trying to combine the questions, so hopefully
Okay.
it works.
Well, academic, when you're in a classroom observing the way that your professor is interacting with you, picking up on how they're interacting with you, and those types of interactions are actually very helpful out in the work field too. Especially nowadays with, social media and texting and all of that. During my time, we didn't have that. So we had to really engage with people one-on-one. And now it's so much easier to not really engage with people that much, so that is a skill that a lot of times I find is a little bit lacking. So developing more of that presence of knowing how to be able to interact with someone and, on a professional level, the same way that you would talk with your professor about, a subject or saying, I'm not really understanding this. Could you explain this? Not not being shy about it. Another soft skill, one thing that I remember we talked a lot about is understanding how to write emails. I mean, it sounds very basic, but even I sometimes have trouble with writing emails. And so a lot of times what I do is I read my emails 2 or 3 times before being satisfied and saying, oh, okay, I think it sounds good. And just making sure, knowing that an email is not like your text. It's an actual email. It's a professional email. And so you have to try to sound as professional as possible with those emails. So, academically, developing your writing skills and critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another question. So we only have a couple more minutes left, and so we may have to wrap this up a little bit quickly. But another question is, how do people find, I guess, internships and jobs in nonprofit work? I think that kind of sums up what the question is asking.
In nonprofit, it's so easy to volunteer. You can just call a nonprofit and say, I'm interested in volunteering, and they would be so happy to actually volunteer. I mean, to take in volunteers. And that's a good way to really start understanding about nonprofit work, because you'll get to see what the different nonprofits do. Not all nonprofits do the same thing. And some are very specific in what they do. And so if you just even call them, and you sometimes, if you look online, if you do your homework and you do your research, you can actually research online and look to see if they actually have a volunteer coordinator. A lot of times nonprofits do have volunteer coordinators, and you can call that person and see if there's an opportunity for you to be able to, do a few hours of volunteering there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I kind of want to do a follow-up answer to that, in the sense that, so nonprofits, you can find a lot of nonprofits through utilizing some different types of websites, and you can find those websites by Google searching or coming to the Career Center, and we can help you kind of like look for, or Career Services, and we can help you look for those resources. But one that we utilize a lot is called idealist.org, and so if you're interested in looking for internships, I recommend looking on that site. Another way to kind of get involved, something that I kind of want to touch upon, and I know we're really short on time because we only have 1 minute left, but I really want to touch upon the whole idea of like myths about nonprofits, because a lot of times people think that a professional, maybe like you don't get paid working in nonprofits. What are your thoughts about that?
What are my thoughts about working?
No, because people are like, oh, people who work at nonprofits are just volunteers, but that's not true. Like, obviously there are people who have jobs at nonprofits. So can you explain to the students a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so nonprofits work in many different ways. A lot of them get grants, and those grants can either come from a county or federal or state level. So those are monies that are going in for probably specific programs. Of course, they have a budget, and so that the salaries are dependent on budgets, and so it's not like you're not getting paid. You are getting paid. I would say that nonprofits are not the highest paying jobs, and you do it mostly because you're passionate about the work. But of course, it's also, I'm in a position where, okay, I'm not making a ton of money, but at the same time, I'm okay. But I also love the principle of the job that I'm doing. And so it fits with my understanding and my own personal passion for it. So that's kind of how I justify how much I'm getting paid.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a very high paying job, it is possible for nonprofits to be able to pay you well. It just all depends on what field you go into, what position you go into.
Yeah, and so I wanted to kind of debunk that myth a little bit, because I feel like it's it's a huge myth, I think. And so something else so we are out of time. So I want to wrap this up. And so thank you, Joanna, for being with us today and taking time out of your week to talk to us. And so in the coming days, I will send an email to the students who kind of tuned in with us, and I'll sharing your contact information with them, so they can follow up. And so this is a very important step that you want to take as a college student, to follow up and grow your network and write that professional email and do those communication and build those soft skills. And we have an alum here who's graciously offered up her time to speak with us today. And so growing your network, whether that's digitally through LinkedIn, whether through email or connecting in person or getting involved and volunteering at the nonprofit that you're really interested in, is definitely ways in which you can learn more about how to select your career path. And so thank you again for being with us today. And yeah, I'm just going to end the meeting now.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I look forward to working with you some more throughout this process. We have some exciting programming coming up. So yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.